Good day. My name is Peter Nkuna and I work for the Ombudsman for Short-Term Insurance. As part of the 2021 installment of the Money Smart Week program, I am going to be speaking with Ayanda Mazwi of our office, which we call OSTI for short, and Ngaba Stlali of Ombudsman for long-term insurance, and we refer to that office as OLTI for short and for convenience purposes. Thank you for joining us. Together with Ayanda and Ngaba, we are going to clarify what is short-term insurance, long-term insurance, who or what is the Ombudsman, what they do, how they do it, etc. Now, to kickstart our conversation, Ayanda, please explain to us what is short-term insurance and perhaps give us examples of what short-term insurance involves.
Thank you, Peter, and good day to everybody listening. Short-term insurance is basically the contract that you obtain with an insurer to cover your valuables. In the sphere of short-term insurance, we are referring more specifically to motor vehicles, homeowners or buildings insurance, householders or your home contents insurance, cell phones, travel, disability, credit protection insurance, and we also cover commercial insurance for small businesses and small proprietors, Peter.
Ngaba, what is long-term insurance?
Thank you very much, Peter, and good day, everyone. A long-term insurance policy is an insurance contract between an insurer and the policyholder, whereby an insurer undertakes in return for the payment of a premium to pay a sum of money on the happening of a specified uncertain event to which the policyholder has some kind of interest. Just to summarize this, an insurance contract deals with those life-changing events which can occur to a person, such as death, disability, rare disease, and retrenchment.
Thank you for clarifying that for us, Ngaba. So Ayanda, does your office also do the same thing that OLTI does? And how is it different, if different at all?
We do the same thing that OLTI does. Obviously, our area of investigation will involve short-term insurance products as opposed to long-term or life insurance products. But essentially, our mandate is to provide the insuring public and the short-term insurance industry with an efficient and fair dispute resolution mechanism. And our process is an alternative dispute resolution process, which is different to what you would experience in a court environment.
So it sounds like you guys do a lot of things. How much would all of this cost me as a consumer, Ayanda?
So when a policyholder, who we refer to as a complainant, submits a complaint to our office for investigation, at that point, there is no fee that is payable by him or her. Essentially, OSTI services are free to the consumer. However, I just want to clarify that although the insurer will pay a fee for each complaint that is submitted to OSTI, we as an office understand that insurers get their funding from consumers, because you will know that they pay the premium to the insurer. So we appreciate at all times that our services are funded both by the consumer as well as the insurer.
Oh, that's interesting. But it sounds to me more like it's actually the consumer that pays for this rather than the insurer, because I'm thinking the insurer probably builds into its premiums the fee that an estimate of sorts of the fee that would probably be payable to the insurance ombudsman in case there is a complaint.
Yes, Peter, you are correct. It is actually a shared contribution between the consumer and the insurer because it is built into the product itself.
And Ngceba, is your office funded on the same model basis, or is it completely different?
Yes, Peter, it is funded on the same model. What we do, we charge insurer for every case that we handle. Over and above that, we also charge insurers an annual levy. Thanks, Peter.
And who may lodge or register a complaint, Ngceba?
Basically, a policyholder, a beneficiary, a cessionary and executor of the deceased estate, a premium payer, a life insured, any complainant who has something had to deal with who had lodged a complaint with the insurer, and the complaint has not been resolved. So those are the kind of people who can lodge a complaint to our office.
So if my neighbor had an insurance dispute with her or his insurance company, and I knew about it and I was unhappy about it, I could lodge a complaint because I know about it and it's sort of close to me?
No, you can't lodge a complaint on behalf of your neighbor unless if that neighbor gives you a mandate, and then we can look at that complaint if there is a mandate from your neighbor.
And Ayanda, would that be any different with regards to OSTI?
No, OSTI deals with the complaints in pretty much the same way. So, you know, you made reference to a neighbor. So we do have some policyholders who may ask a friend or a relative to submit a complaint on their behalf, maybe because of technical issues or because they feel that they will communicate their plight better. They are welcome to do so. However, our office will need that a power of attorney be filled in so that there is, like Ngceba pointed out, a proper mandate for us to deal with the complaint. I also just want to mention that when you approach our office, and I think it would be similar to OLTI as well, it isn't absolutely necessary that you appoint an attorney, because in terms of our process, all we need from you are the documents that are relevant to your side of your story and any other information that may help for us to deal with your complaint. So we will decide if the insurer handled your matter properly by looking at the facts. It's not how you present your arguments. If you do wish to engage with an attorney, you may do so. Those costs will be for your account, but like I said, it's not absolutely essential that you do that.
Oh, that's interesting to know. At least one doesn't have to spend a lot of money to get some kind of relief from your office. And maybe I'll direct this one to you, Ngceba. How do you guys investigate disputes that are referred to your office?
Basically, what we do, we investigate disputes based on paper, mostly on paper, and by exchange of correspondence, documents, and records. And sometimes we phone, the parties involved, and sometimes we meet one party or both parties. Like, in a conciliation meeting, we do that. And then if the parties reach a certain agreement, then the matter is finalized. If they can't reach an agreement, we then go back to our office and then make a ruling. Our rulings, the first one is a provisional ruling, and then the second one is a final determination. So if we have made a provisional ruling, the complainant has further opportunity to challenge that ruling by submitting new information or any other relevant information which has not been previously submitted. Thank you, Peter.
But that makes me wonder. It almost sounds like I could keep on having multiple bites at the cherry, if one can put it that way, in that if your decision is not satisfactory to me, I can always dig up additional information, present it to you, and ask that you reconsider the matter, and that sounds almost unlikely.
I don't understand, Peter, when you say that sounds unlikely. What we
No, I think what I'm trying to establish is surely there must be some sort of end of the road, because if I'm understanding you correctly, it sounds like I will keep on having the opportunity to present additional information, and that might mean that we never get to a resolution, and I'm sure I wouldn't want that as a consumer.
Thank you, Peter. As I have stated, Peter, the first ruling that is done is a provisional ruling. Then you have a further opportunity to challenge that ruling. But when you submit new information, then we make a final determination. So you don't get any further opportunity to challenge that final determination. It's only when if a final determination has been made and then you are still not satisfied with that, then you go the route of appeal. You apply for a leave to appeal.
Right. Now I understand. Thanks, Never. And Ayanda, on OSTI's side, is it any different? If there are any differences, what are those?
Okay. The similarity is it's most of the things that OLTI does and its processes is very similar to how we do it. But I think obviously with the nature of complaints, there would be a difference in the manner on which a complaint is actually dealt with. So like OLTI, our correspondence is predominantly on paper. We are in the process of implementing mediation processes. It's not yet finally completed, but we're in the process of also implementing mediation processes where we will get the parties together to come to an agreed outcome. However, generally the process is that we will receive your application for assistance. It will contain the relevant information. We will review that and confirm that the matter does indeed fall within our jurisdiction. Once we are satisfied with this, our process, I'm not really clear if OLTI does this as well, but our process specifically will refer the complainant or the complaint itself to the insurer. And we will allow them 14 days to resolve the dispute directly with the insured or the policyholder before we proceed with the matter. Should this process not yield in a satisfactory agreement on the part of the insured, we will then take the matter over to our investigative stages. There are separate stages within that aspect, which I'm not going to go into the detail of, but similar to the OLTI's process, we will issue a recommendation that is done by our assistant ombudsman. If you are not satisfied with that recommendation, there is an opportunity to refer the matter on review. This is done by 4 senior assistant ombudsmen, our CEO, Edith, as well as our ombudsman, Judge McLaren. At this point, we will either issue a provisional or a final ruling, depending on the circumstances. And should either party not be satisfied with that process, then we will enter into the appeal stage. As Neba pointed out, you would have to request leave to appeal. This must be requested from the ombudsman. There must be sufficient grounds on which you request to appeal the decision. So it can't simply be because you're not happy with the outcome was not in your favor. There has to be grounds that you believe that should the matter be dealt with by a different adjudicator, that it would yield a different outcome. That's a separate process where the specific terms of it are indicated in our terms of reference.
You mentioned a very big word earlier on, Ayanda, and I would just like for you to clarify. You said something falling within your jurisdiction. What exactly do you mean by that?
So our office has limitations in terms of the types of complaints that we would deal with. So for example, if we receive a matter and we realize that it is in fact a matter dealing with or within the sphere of long-term insurance, what we would do is refer the matter to the appropriate office. If the complaint, for instance, deals with the conduct of a broker, our office won't have the jurisdiction or the mandate to deal with that matter, and we will refer it to the appropriate office. So jurisdiction would simply just refer to what types of matters our office is actually allowed to deal with.
Oh, okay. Thank you for clarifying that. Neba,
Yes.
how do you decide or determine what should be the outcome of a particular complaint?
Thank you, Peter. We look at the relevant facts, we look at the probabilities, we look at the onus of proof, we look at the legal principles, and we also consider our equity and fairness. That's basically how we decide, make a ruling in a specific matter. Thank you, Peter.
And Ayanda, I presume your office would work on the same basis, seeing that most of the answers seem to sort of be aligned?
That's correct, Peter. What I can just further add on to what Neba has already said, we examine the information and evidence that is placed before us by the parties. And like he said, our recommendations are based on or guided by the legal position and principles of fairness and equity. It is important, I think, at this point to stress that we are not a champion of the consumer, nor are we a champion of the insurance companies. We will decide whether or not the insurer's decision was in fact justified based on the evidence that is provided to us, or whether the complainant's case should be considered and the claim should be paid based on the information that is provided. So if I can speak directly to the consumer specifically, it is not just because a matter is brought to this office that the outcome will certainly be in your favor. But I think as with the years of experience that our respective offices have, we are in a good position to be able to determine what the correct and fair outcome of the dispute should be under the prevailing circumstances.
You said, Ayanda, that you would evaluate the merits based on evidence presented to you. Is it a correct understanding then to say that you guys don't do any gathering of evidence yourselves, or you don't investigate the facts as such? How does that work?
You're correct, Peter. We do not gather evidence, and by that I'm now talking about external investigations. Our process of gathering evidence is limited to the information that is provided by the parties. I previously stated that our process is predominantly on paper, so the insured will submit their details of complaint together with their supporting documentation, and then the insurer will provide an answer to that complaint, justifying its decision, or at least giving us a background on how it arrived at its decision, together with the supporting information and documents concerning that. During the process of our investigation, we may decide that we need additional information from either parties based on where we are in the process or what the merits of the complaint are. we have to request that information from the respective party, and they are obliged to provide that information to us. So as an office, we do not go on a fact-finding mission such as doing on-site investigations in the case of a buildings claim, or interviewing witnesses that are referred to by the respective party, for example, that witnessed the accident or were at an accident scene. That information has to be brought to us on paper so that we can review that evidence in order to make a decision.
Okay. No, that makes sense. So, listening to what you're saying, Ayanda, and I'm directing this to you, Neba, considering that your offices sort of function more or less along similar lines, one can envisage a situation where after your investigations, it isn't possible to decide on the merits for whatever reasons. Does that ever happen? What would be the outcome in that case? Or what would you do in an instance where maybe the evidence isn't necessarily pointing in a particular direction?
Yes, of course, Peter, it does happen, and we have it has happened quite a lot, a number of times in our office, and our rules do provide some guidance in this regard. Our rule 5.2 stipulates that if, in the opinion of the ombudsman, a complaint cannot be resolved on a balance of probabilities and with due regard to the incidence of owners, then the ombudsman can tell both parties that a decision in favor of one of the parties cannot be made. And Rule 5.3 also stipulates that if, in the opinion of the ombudsman, as well as the respective parties who are involved in the complaint, agree that a determination can best be made based on hearing evidence, then hearing will be arranged. Thank you, Peter.
Ayanda, do you also have your own versions of Rule 5.2 and 5.3? Obviously not necessarily also as 5.2 and 5.3, but how do you deal with the same situation?
It's pretty much exactly what Neba had already set out. So under our terms of reference, and just to mention, our terms of reference are available on our website. But basically, if our office is unable to establish the facts on a clear balance of probabilities, as Neba pointed out, we must be able to reach a point where we have done everything possible to come up with an outcome, but in some instances that does not take place. And what our office will then do is inform the parties that the matter is best suited for a court of law and advise the parties accordingly to proceed the matter on that aspect. I think I want to add on to what Neba said in terms of issues such as prescription and time barring that a consumer might be concerned about, because a matter might have rested in our office for 4 to 6 months, and only later on at that stage we tell the parties that they need to go to court. So just to clarify that prescription and time barring it doesn't run at the time that our office is dealing with a complaint, so it actually suspends during that period. And the reason why our office will not proceed with a matter when it needs to be resolved in a court of law is because we find that a formal hearing needs to be done, and our office, having limited adjudicative function, is not able to hold such formal hearings. A formal hearing would require that an expert give testimony and perhaps also any witnesses involved in the relevant claim. That testimony needs to be examined and cross-examined, and evidence need to be taken under oath, and our office does not have the function or capabilities to be able to undergo this exercise. So in some instances where there's a factual dispute, testing the opposing witnesses' statements in this way is the best way to arrive at a proper conclusion. And for that reason, we would refer the parties to the court.
Ayanda, you brought up two also very technical sounding concepts. You mentioned prescription and time barring, and it sounds like these are very important concepts for me to understand as a consumer, so that I make sure that I don't fall foul of the processes and the law and whatnot. Can you just quickly explain to us what these are?
All right.
Time barring and prescription.
Essentially, prescription is the period of time in law in which you can proceed to claim in terms of a court process against the insurer, or if you are a claimant and you would like to claim against the insurer and take the matter to court, usually it would be 3 years from the time of the claim. So the prescription issue is pretty much that you do have 3 years in which to refer the matter to a court of law to further pursue the decision of the insurer. Time barring is contractually set in your policy contract, and it will state, for example, that you have up to 9 months to pursue legal action in terms of the claim or decision taken by the insurer. Some policies would have may extend that period, but in terms of the policyholder protection rules, it must be up to at the minimum 9 months is provided to the claimant to be able to pursue the matter after the decision or the rejection of the claim has been taken by the insurer.
All right, that's quite helpful. Thank you, Ayanda. Neba, you have now made the decision on a particular matter. Would that determination or decision be binding on the parties?
No, it will only bind insurers. Complainants are not bound by our decision. They can go the civil route, they can issue summons and go to court in order to claim if they are not satisfied with our processes.
So Neba, based on what you said earlier on, and I also had Ayanda confirm that their office also does the same thing. If I'm not quite happy with the outcome, what is the exact process that one embarks upon in appealing? Are there any formalities, any specific things that one needs to bear in mind so that they don't fall foul of the procedural aspects of the appeal process?
Well, Peter, there are no formalities. Just like when there's no need for the complainant to be represented by an attorney, there's no need for a complainant when applying for a leave to appeal to be represented by an attorney. You can just sit down and do and draft his application for leave to appeal and state exactly under which grounds he wants to appeal. He has a period of 1 month in terms of our rules to appeal, and the complainant can only appeal after a final determination has been made. So basically there are no formalities except the fact that there's a 30 days period that he needs to comply with. Thank you, Peter.
Right. No, that makes sense. And I wonder if your process is the same or similar. Anything that you have to say in that regard?
Ngceba is absolutely correct. There isn't any formal process. There is, however, like he pointed out, a 30-day period in which you need to approach our office and set the grounds in which you seek to appeal the final ruling that has been issued by the office.
Let's say I submitted my appeal on the 35th day, so 5 days late. What would that mean? Are you going to chase me away, or what will be the position?
Well, Peter, we don't deal with the application for leave to appeal. Only the ombudsman does. So it's according to the discretion of the ombudsman, who can decide whether to waive the late submission, etc. But our processes are not that formal. We follow an informal process. We follow an informal process, so I'm sure if there are any grounds for the late submission of the appeal, the ombudsman will decide to look at the application for leave to appeal. Thank you, Peter.
All right, no, thanks for that clarification. Now, Ayanda, I'll take this back to you. I've got a complaint. What kind of period am I looking at in terms of getting to a point where there's some sort of resolution, on average, say?
That's a very difficult question to answer, because the answer to that question will depend on the merits and the complexity of the specific matter. When we have complaints submitted in our office and we've gone through the initial registration process, and the matter is now allocated to an assistant ombudsman, we have what we refer to as a fast track department, where the matters are profiled. In that department, if a matter is indicated as easily resolvable based on the merits and complexity of that particular matter, then it would be dealt with within a period of up to 56 days. However, that does not apply to the majority of matters that are investigated in our office. When the matter gets into the investigative stage, it now depends on the period in which we wait for the respective parties to submit the relevant documents, how complex the matter is, and how much professional time needs to be taken by our office to make a decision. So it can take up to between 4 to 6 months, sometimes to a year, but our aim is to try and resolve matters as quickly as possible, given the specific circumstances of that claim.
Okay. No, but I take it that is probably also the answer that you would give me.
Yes, I fully agree with Ayanda. I would just like to add that it depends on the nature of a complaint. Like in our office, we've got those complaints dealing with disability. Disability cases, they take too long to resolve. It's not an easy matter. You've got, expert reports that you need to look at. Maybe the insurer would like to refer the complaint to further medical legal examination, and then we have to wait. At the end of the day, the time is going. So some of the complaints which can be easily resolved, like funeral policies, we take maybe up to 6 months to resolve those complaints, just as Ayanda have stated, depending, how we get responses from the respective parties. So it really depends, basically on the nature of complaint and whether the parties are complying with our deadlines. That's it. Thank you.
All right. I heard about the appeal process and the escalation process that both of you referred to. But I also recall that you specifically never mentioned the ombudsman and the discretion that the ombudsman has. And it just makes me wonder, who does the ombudsman report to? Is he the law unto himself, or what is the position there?
No, Peter, the ombudsman is not the law unto himself. He can be taken on review, but the office reports to the Ombudsman Council. That's where we report to. Our decisions can be, we have been taken on review on several occasions. So, so the ombudsman is not the law and is not the law himself. He just makes decisions, and those decisions can be reviewable. Thank you, Peter.
Just to understand. So, if I'm not happy with the ombudsman's decision, I can still approach the Ombudsman Council for the Ombudsman Council to overrule the Ombudsman's decision.
No, that's not how it works, Peter. You cannot. We only report to the Ombudsman Council in terms of our internal processes, our finances, how many complaints that we have resolved. If you are not happy with the processes that has been followed in our office, you are free to go to court to challenge, our processes. You can do that. We also do have, a judge who has been appointed in order to look at the complaints in our office. If you have a specific complaint against me as an assistant ombudsman or any other person with regard to the investigation of a complaint, you can lodge that complaint against me. It doesn't go to the merits of the complaint, but it's a complaint. If you say, there has been a very long delay, NEBA is not investigating my complaint in a manner which is satisfactory to me, then, the judge who has been appointed to oversee that process can look at that complaint and can make a decision, and then the management will then decide what to do after that.
Oh, that's comforting to know that you're not just going to do as you please. Ayanda, is your office also working on the same basis?
Similar. Yes, OSTI at the moment, OSTI is answerable to a board of directors. The chairman and the directors are what I can say non-executive. What this means is that they're not involved in the considering of individual complaints. Instead, they are concerned with issues relating to the governance of OSTI. Essentially, our board of directors are there to ensure that OSTI is properly resourced and are able to carry out its functions effectively, impartially, and independently, so that we are free of any control or influence by those who the dispute involves.
While we are at that, Ayanda, something just struck me. I know there's the FSCA and National Treasury, and somehow one would think that they could have some sort of oversight role over OSTI and OLTI. What would be your comment on that, both of you, Ayanda and Neba?
OSTI operates independently of the Financial Sector Conduct Authority as well as the Prudential Authority in its adjudication and dispute resolution process. So to answer your question, essentially, Peter, the answer is no, there isn't an oversight from those two bodies.
And same thing applies to your office?
Yes, same thing applies to us. The only thing that we do as an office, if there are systematic complaints, what we do, we refer those systematic complaints to the regulator, which is FSCA, in order to consider those complaints. You know, those kind of complaints are those complaints where you can see that, for instance, if a complaint has been received, and then there are various complaints which are quite similar to the complaint that has been received, and we see that there might be a problem with a certain insurer or maybe with a number of insurance companies, then we refer those aspects to the FSCA. And it's not like they have got an oversight on our part. Only that we do, we report those kind of things, and we also report if there's a breach of the policyholders protection rules. We also report those instances to the FSCA. Thank you.
All right. No, that makes sense. Ayanda, I remember earlier on in the discussion, you said something about, and I think it was when we were talking about jurisdiction. If the investigation revealed that, or rather the complaint was directed at a broker, you would refer it to a different ombudsman, and you didn't specify which specific ombudsman. Now I'm thinking in your investigations, there could well be instances where a broker was involved, and your investigation reveals, at least as far as you can determine, that the broker is or may be the party at fault in some other respect. What would happen in such an instance?
Okay, so as a starting point, we will always investigate whether the insurer itself dealt with the matter correctly. Our mandate is limited to the insurance company, so we cannot deal with the conduct of the broker, like I previously mentioned. So you will find a point where a matter is purely a broker dispute. We would refer the matter to the Office of the FACE Ombudsman to deal with. And however, there are some instances where there is a split between issues that involve the insurance company, which we will deal with fully, and where a particular issue that still remains outstanding involves the conduct of the broker, we will at that point refer the matter again to the FACE Ombudsman.
Would the same thing apply insofar as OLTI is concerned?
Yes, exactly what Ayanda has said. What we do, we only investigate that aspect of the complaint which falls within our jurisdiction, and any other aspect which deals with the conduct of the broker, whether that broker is independent or tied to an insurer, we will then refer that aspect of the complaint to the FACE Ombudsman, who has jurisdiction to entertain those complaints. But however, what we do, we only refer the matter at the end. You know, if we have made a ruling and then the complainant does not come back, before we close the matter, we then refer to the Office of the Ombudsman. We certainly do not want both offices investigating the same complaint. So that's how we do it.
All right. No, thank you. I want to take things a little bit elsewhere now. I noticed on the social media platforms that there is an institution or something called the Insurance Ombudsman. I tried to go behind and understand who and what this Insurance Ombudsman is, and I'm wondering where it fits in with the Ombudsman for short-term insurance and the Ombudsman for long-term insurance. Is this the same thing, and how do all these things fit in? Ayanda, can you explain that for me?
All right. The two offices, which is OSTI and OLTI, are currently in the process, or they're currently in a soft merger or soft amalgamation, which is in line with the financial services ombud schemes and what the future looks like for ombud schemes. So in terms of that process, because it's not yet finalized, we have the two offices, whilst operating independently and having different reporting lines, we both share one ombudsman, who is Judge McLaren. So he is the ombudsman for the short-term insurance as well as the long-term insurance, and he sits as the adjudicative head in both offices. So what we have done, just to facilitate this merger, is have a shared access portal where you can submit your complaint to the Insurance Ombudsman, and those matters can be dealt with appropriately, whether it will be referred to the short-term insurance space or the long-term insurance space. So in the submission of complaints, that is where that amalgamation or the Insurance Ombudsman would be considered to work together. Now, also, the same will apply at the end of the resolution of the complaint. That is when it is determined and a final ruling will be issued by Judge McLaren as the Ombudsman. Now, on the social media front, the same thing applies in the sense that we do have various social media accounts which are used predominantly for consumer education and consumer awareness. And those platforms are managed and monitored by both offices, and that is where you can see some of the consumer tips that our office will give. We also deal with some questions that may arise within the consumer space, some topical issues depending on what the climate is at the time, as well as post some very educational material, reading and recordings as well on those platforms. So we administered those as a collaborative effort between the short-term insurance ombudsman and the long-term insurance ombudsman.
Oh, so the Insurance Ombudsman is actually an alter ego, so to speak, of OSTI and OLTI working together. Okay. All right, no, that makes
Yes,
sense.
you can call it that.
All right, no, that makes sense. It was something that could get one wondering quite some bit. Now, I would like to get in contact with your respective offices. How does one do that, and how does one register complaints? Never?
Basically, you can contact us telephonically. We do take complaints telephonically. You can also, we also accept walk-ins complaints. You can send your complaint via post using our fax line, by email. You can also lodge your complaint on our website. The telephone number is 021-657-5000. And then we also have a share call which is 0860-103-236. And our fax number is 021-674-0951. And our email address is info@ombud.co.za. And our website is www.ombud.co.za. Thank you, Peter.
And Ayanda, your contact details and perhaps also touching on how complaints can be registered.
All right, you can submit your complaints online on our website www.osti.co.za. You can also email your complaint to info@osti.co.za. Our share call number is 0860-726-8900. You can also request one of our agents to assist you to submit a complaint telephonically through these telephone numbers as well.
Thanks, Ayanda. I think maybe as a last question, and particularly in the current context of the COVID-19 pandemic, can one visit to your offices in person, and are you COVID-19 compliant, Ayanda?
Our office is currently closed due to the COVID-19 regulations. However, our staff are fully working remotely, and our services have in no way been affected or interrupted. Our contact centers, as well as all of our assistant ombudsman and professional staff, are still available during the working hours of 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m.
And Neba, does that also apply to your office? I remember you specifically mentioned that people can do walk-ins into your office.
Yes, our office is open, Peter. We do have support staff working at our office, as well as 2 or 3 adjudicators coming in. Others are working remotely. So basically, if the complainant wants to come and lodge a complaint in our office, you can just speak to the security officers, and then the security officers, what they will do, they will contact one of our staff members, who will then go down, provided that he or she is wearing a mask, as well as gloves, and a plastic visa. And then we'll speak to the complainant concerned and take some details of what is the nature of complaint and so forth. If she's satisfied or he's satisfied that he needs to take down the details of the complaint, and then the complaint is processed, then the staff member concerned will call that person and come to our office and in the boardroom and take down all the details so that we can process that complaint accordingly. We are, of course, COVID compliant. Otherwise, we won't be operating. We will be in breach of the regulations relating to the COVID. Thank you.
Well, it's good to know that the public would be safe in visiting your offices. Well then, folks, that's it. I would like to take this opportunity to thank you for the time in listening and watching. I would like to thank Ayanda Mazwi of OSTI and Neba Stlali of OLTI, the Ombudsman for short-term insurance, the Ombudsman for long-term insurance, the Insurance Ombudsman. Lastly but not least, I would like to acknowledge that this program is part of the Money Smart Week South Africa 2021 installment, and we thank you and hope that it has somewhat enlightened you in terms of understanding what is short-term and long-term insurance, what's an ombudsman, what they do, how you can lodge a complaint and have your dispute resolved, and all of that detail. There will be a second installment of this where we go a little bit more into detail with regards to the content of these investigations and the outcomes thereof. We thank you.